All right, it might just be us. It may be a busy day, but we'll go ahead and get started.
All right, so hello and welcome to our second in the Feedback Affinity Group series. We're glad to have you here today. If you will look in the chat, you should see the bit.ly website where you can get all of the information. This includes a copy of our participants guide, and that will help you stay organized throughout our time together. So we are excited to have you joining us for this Lead Teacher Collaborative. And as I said, this is the second session in this group. If there's a mix-up with your Zoom link, we can direct you and help you to get connected, or you can stay with us, put it in the chat, and then we'll do what we can to help. Today, we're going to showcase high-impact practices, models, strategies, and share resources and highlight ways to facilitate effective teaching and learning, both in the traditional classroom and across various remote learning environments.
I'm so sorry. I'm just now finding the chat box on my screen. Linda, we can't see you.
You can't see me? Oh no, what happened?
Well, we haven't been able to. I just thought you would turn your camera off.
No, it's on according to, well, it won't let me do anything. Yeah, it won't let me do a thing. I can't do.
Do you want to sign out and sign back on?
I could do that. Yep. All righty. I shall return, ladies.
See you in just a second.
Okay.
As you know, obviously, we are Brandy and Linda, both literacy coaches for Nice Foundation, and we'll give Linda just a second to sign back on. I hate that her camera isn't working.
It won't let me get out of this. It won't let me go off.
We can continue. I just hate to not see your pretty face.
Can you see me now?
There you are. Yes, there you are.
Cool. All right, very good. So anyway, my name is Linda Stewart, and with me today is Brandy Wilson, and we're both literacy coaches with the Nice Foundation.
By now, I feel it's safe to assume that you are good with Zoom. The only thing that I will say here, especially for you, Anna, is if you want to minimize your Zoom screen, because it does automatically take you to full screen when I share, and you can have two tabs open, one with your participant guide and one with the Zoom screen. That's up to you, your preference. You may have even printed it. Any questions about Zoom as we move forward? All righty.
So we would love for everyone to take a moment to introduce yourselves and share your feedback frustrations. What are a couple of feedback frustrations that you have experienced? And you can type it in the chat or just say it out loud.
I'll share one.
Okay.
When you're a middle school teacher and you have 90 or however many students and you think about writing, it can be extremely overwhelming to take on giving feedback, written feedback or verbal, to every student.
Yes.
If you time it out, you think about students with, in one classroom, say you have 25, or let's just say you have 20, if you just allot 5 minutes to each student to have that verbal feedback, think about the time it takes and how many classes it is. And I had never thought of it that way until Linda and I had listened to this podcast, but I was like, wow, like it would take you a week, which it does. Anna says, students not taking feedback, not being receptive. Wow. That's a good one. Sometimes you don't even consider that. It's one thing to give it. It's another thing for someone to be able to take that on and actually make it actionable. Thanks for sharing.
With myself, when I was, as you said, grading all those essays, and I noticed myself when I would start, I would be much more rigorous in my grading. And then as I got tired and I kept reading basically the same thing over and over again. I got much more lax. So I had to start doing 10 at a time, lay it aside, get up, do something else, and then go back again. And it drove
It,
me nuts.
and that is so true. And I love that transparency there because that is so true, Linda. And you even think about the rubric, even using
I
a rubric,
know.
you would become so much more lenient.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love seeing friends.
Yeah, I'm right in the courtyard, so you're probably gonna see a lot of people walk behind me.
No problem. We're happy to share. All right. Just like same slide as last session, the Lead Teacher Collaborative will allow us to build a sense of community with one another in all of our schools combined. We'll be able to reflect on and share about some of our rural life work and hear great ideas and strategies and just feedback from other teachers and schools, and also to engage in professional learning that's centered on the key topics that are aligned to the grant, such as literacy and personalized learning, which we'll segue into now. You can see here that for rural life in the Venn diagram, we take literacy and personalized learning and just meld those together. And it's to support improvement in those middle grades, especially looking at student literacy outcomes. And we just want to take research and best practice from both of those fields and combine them to offer you the best professional learning that we can.
Your PowerPoint didn't change. I don't know if the sharing's paused.
Oh. Let me move your. Thank you for letting me know. There is that slide. Okay, thank you, Anna. And also, if you see here, in November, we met with Leading Edge Learning, and we are now in the January, February affinity groups. And we will also meet again with Leading Edge Learning in February and just duplicate the same system, doing the affinity groups with different topics, of course, based on feedback from you.
So during the November 18th session with Leading Edge Learning, we gathered your responses from the Jamboard activity, if you remember, and feedback was one that lead teachers expressed a need. Specifically, lead teachers wanted more information about effective feedback and how to implement that feedback seamlessly into their practice. So please note that this learning was personalized just for you. Hint, the grant, personalized learning. So for today's session, we will share our own successes and challenges that we've had while reflecting on our personal practice of feedback and explore a few tech tools to help you streamline your feedback. So looking at this slide, we see our objectives. First objective for today is self-reflect on personal practice of giving feedback. Notice the icon. The second objective is to explore the 3 avenues of effective feedback practice. Again, notice the icon. And the last is to apply some tech tools to help streamline feedback. And the icons that you see as we go through the presentation, when we're talking about self-reflection, you'll see that particular icon. And when we're exploring the avenues, you'll see the binoculars. And when we talk about tech tools, you'll see the tablet.
Hi, Kayla. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, sorry, our internet went out at school, so I had to rush home. It went out right at the end of the day, so.
No problem. We had some minor
That's
tech
fine.
issues here on our end as well.
Just one of those days. So in our last session, we worked on doing a collaborative definition of feedback. And we came up with this one in different, with your different ideas. This is the one that we, Brandy wrote using that information. The sharing of remedial information regarding a process or work that is relevant and timely to student learning and outcomes. So I think that this is a good definition for us to use. It grounds our thinking for this session, and it will help us as we progress on through.
All right. So keeping that definition in mind and remembering that bridge to practice activity that we ask you to participate in, we would like to have an opportunity to share and reflect on that. What we've done actually for our reflection protocol is to offer a slide deck. I will be dropping the link into the chat. There you are, friends. If you will click on that. Oh, just a moment. Click on that link. It's going to take you to the slide deck. When everyone is in, just claim a slide, any slide that you would like. There's plenty there with just a few of us in here. And just put your name at the top. If you'll see, I went ahead and claimed one. All right, so in reflection of that bridge to practice activity, we would like you to stick with that hashtag theme that we used last session where we sorted out our examples of feedback. So thinking back, as you gathered all that data, what do you think about your, in a nutshell, in a sum, what do you think about your feedback or your professional feedback of practice? Would your hashtag be teacher on a roll? Would your hashtag be still need work? Would your hashtag be mama's got it? What would your hashtag be? Go ahead and fill that in.
Is it okay that mine's a little bit different, that I was observing a teacher, was kind of observing the feedback within her classroom?
Perfect. Yes, I love that perspective, Kayla.
Okay.
Ooh, I love that hashtag fantastic. All right, we'll dig into these a little bit more, but what we would like to do at this time is to give you a few moments to self-reflect. Think about what you noticed. Was there anything that surprised you? How did the students react, which was really good for your perspective, Kayla? And then what would you change? Some prompting questions would be maybe I need to, or I would, or think about how would you, using the same protocol or the same strategy, what would you do differently next time? So we're going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes to just double click in the box and share your thoughts there. Let's gauge time. Thumbs up if you're ready to move on. Thumbs down if you need a couple more seconds. All right, let's see what Anna has to say. Uphill climb. I love that. Anna, what surprised you about your feedback?
The students adapting to the feedback, like each time that I give feedback, they've become more receptive to it for the most part. I know I said earlier that that's a frustration that kids don't take the feedback, but as they've gotten used to the feedback, they've learned how to adapt and become stronger at whatever they're doing. So that, I mean, that's shouldn't be surprising, but it is, because you don't realize how important that feedback is.
And how it can be so actionable and transforming. And especially if you just change small things and you're a little bit more specific. And I think for a lot of us, that's the major, I guess, change when we realize that we're not being as specific or pinpointing for the student. When we just do a blanket statement to everyone, we don't realize the impact that we're missing out on, the opportunity that we're missing out on. Is there anything you would change or you're considering changing about how you deliver your feedback? Here it says.
I know on the bridge to practice, it said student to student feedback. I'm not very happy with the way the students give feedback to each other. They've gotten better throughout the year, but I would like to see them be able to give similar feedback that I can give. So it's just teaching them how to give feedback is a big thing that I think would be something I need to work on and change.
Gosh, I love that in-depth reflection. What about you, Linda? That was good.
Yes.
I feel that there's so much modeling and training that has to go into that. And this year has really been difficult, like understatement of the century for sure. It's just been a difficult year. And so being able to transition them to do that on top of everything else that's going on is a hard task. So I understand the uphill climb hashtag, especially on that area. But just knowing that, keeping that expectation consistent, that they will get there, just like their reactions to the feedback and their abilities to respond and be actionable, how you've seen an increase in that, you'll also see that as they continue to interact and you continue to encourage that. Kayla, I love that you said students were almost unresponsive to feedback. I say I love that because you notice something that we can act on or you can share, and we can leverage this data to make a move with our teachers. How did students react?
I think I was in a math class and I was observing the math lesson. And of course, at the time, I mean, they were each doing like independent work and then sharing like a think, pair, share kind of thing. So it was a real quick, like, show me your, I think they were doing time that particular moment, but they were showing the times on clocks, and every student would just, show their time based on what the question was. And pretty much when the students put it up there, the teacher was like, fantastic, and then would move on, oh, fantastic. And it was repetitive in my mind. And so even when some of the kids that you could tell were really surprised that they got the problem right, somebody that may have been a struggling student, it was almost like just because they heard fantastic so much that I don't feel like that it actually registered. Whereas
it didn't mean something, it didn't carry any weight.
It was meaningless. Yeah.
Right.
Didn't carry any weight there.
Right.
And
I don't know. That's just what I picked up on, and felt like I would have liked to have seen a little more specific feedback to the students.
And I think that makes me think about how, as teachers, sometimes when we think about feedback, like we talked about in the last session, it's almost like grading, and it's an opportunity to steer them in the right direction. But we also forget that there's that opportunity to share that exemplar work and to leverage someone's really good work so the rest of the class can see it and use it as an example. So, fantastic is great, but why is this fantastic? And especially in math, like what step? I see that you reduce quickly. If we're talking fractions, I see during long division, you did this. I mean, those specific small little actions that we can build upon. So another student might have missed that. So just like you said, instead of just fantastic, and I like that your hashtag matches fantastic. So instead of just fantastic, even on that positive feedback, to be specific. So I guess kind of you answered the question there, what would you change? Kayla, I know this is really digging into you, but as an administrator, when you're giving feedback, how do you feel about feedback and reflection to, just our last session? Would you change anything about how you give feedback to teachers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would, and I feel like that feedback was always pushed, in my own evaluation. That of course in our county there for a little while, that was like the big initiative, was positive reinforcement, positive feedback. So I feel like, when I'm looking at an observation that I try to find something, because you always have to do an area, for refinement. And so I always try to pick out one thing, and I always try to end my refinement even with a positive, even though you might need to,
I like that.
even though you didn't, hit on this part of the rubric, your lesson had this, because I feel like that when I would look back at observations, I would see just something that I needed to work on, and that was just pretty much it. I could only focus on that, even though I had some good stuff over here on this other side. So I always try to give a specific thing that I liked, even in the refinement section, just so you have that balance there. And that's just something I always try to do, not to downplay, what needs to be tweaked a little bit, but to know that even though this wasn't exactly where it needs to be, I did like this part. So, I mean, that's just something that I try to do specifically.
I like that. And as an educator, I remember we had a new assistant principal come in, and I was one of the first people to be observed. Everybody's talking about, well, how was it? Was he hard? And I said, all I can tell you is the feedback is amazing. And he was just so specific. And if he told you something that you needed to work on, he gave you an example of something that you might do. And I just thought that was huge. He didn't leave it just up to us. So he really, when it came to feedback, he was really spot on with that. I could probably call him and have him come in and say, why don't you teach this? Thanks, ladies, for being vulnerable and sharing with us. We really appreciate that. All right, let's keep moving.
So when we go back to the January session, in which we collaboratively looked at that Jamboard and we added things we wanted to learn more about, sharing the topics you were interested in and diving into those, there were two threads that arose. One was, one thing that surfaced was effective feedback, and the other was streamlining feedback. So we would like to introduce you to three ways or three avenues of ways that you can utilize feedback in your classroom. So in order to explore these three avenues of feedback, we'd like to give you a little bit of autonomy to choose your own pathway using a Padlet. So that link will be dropped into the chat, and then we will give you directions.
All right, ladies, it is in the chat, and it is also here on my screen. If you notice, did everybody, are you able to get in? With all of our tech issues today, if it might come up, of course, you're not able to get in. You'll see it's a read, rate, respond protocol. If you've not been familiar with a Padlet that's set up in columns, the scroll bar is just here on the right of each column. And we first have a read box, rate box, and respond box. And so that's how we'd like you to travel through each column. We would like you to choose at least one activity box to explore. Then we would like you to rate that. Instructions for rating, say if you rate it 1 star, you're very unlikely to use this or you disagree with the author. If you rate it a 5 or up to a 5, you're very likely to use this or you agree. So with 1 being that negative and 5 being the positive. And if you're not familiar with rating, you just scroll over, or I'm sorry, hover over and click the rate tab here or icon with a star, and then you can rate it using your 1, 2, 3, 4, however many stars you'd like to rate it. And adding a comment after you rate, we would love for you to respond. And think about the whys. Why did you rate it high or why did you rate it low? Would you use it? Would you not use it? And so feel free to add a comment there. And then also, if time permits, feel free to reply to someone else's comment. You'll notice here that we do have student to student, student to teacher, and teacher to student avenues to explore. This last column is effective feedback, and this is just building on our last session. If there's anything there that you would like to explore in this column. We're going to gauge time, and we're thinking, what do you think, Linda? 10 to 12 minutes to explore?
Yeah.
I think we're trying to monitor our time. So we'll try 10 to 12 minutes and kind of get a feel for everyone. So we'll set a timer there. Again, the directions are here because I know that's a lot at once. You can remember the RRR, read, rate, respond, but everything that you need to know is here. If you have any trouble, Linda and I will still be here on screen, and you are welcome to go off screen as you explore or off camera as you explore or stay on camera. That's up to you. Now, before we get started and start that timer, are there any questions? All right, ladies, go for it. We have 2 more minutes. All right, ladies, thanks so much for participating. I'd like to scroll through and see some feedback.
Well, I am the anonymous in case you haven't process of elimination, but I don't know why my name is not in there. Maybe because I don't have an account, but just so you know.
Well, Brittany had also said earlier that everyone that came in was under her name. And I said, well, everybody just wants to be you, you know?
Apparently so. And I'm
So
anonymous.
today, Kayla, you're just trying to be anyone, just not yourself.
Apparently.
You're anonymous, you're Brittany, you're
Just whatever I feel like at the moment.
And student to student, I see that both of you looked at the tag feedback. I love, Anna, that you chose that, especially from what you said earlier, because this is a great tool for you to use. And just like Linda and I talked in researching our presentation and what we'd like to share for feedback, how sentence stems and starters are great, but just as Kayla mentioned, that shared language that you're going to use within the class constantly and consistently, and setting up those routines and procedures can leverage that feedback to where your students are getting from the other student what you would hope to give them yourselves. Anything you want to add to that, Miss Linda?
No, I think that was perfect.
The peer critique, creating a culture of, what was this one? Revision. I love, and I got some ideas of the importance of feedback, but I didn't really know specifically what they did to get students where they are, except that they started with doing the same things when they were in preschool. And can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, they seemed like by the time they got to middle school, they knew how to critique. So there wasn't much of a, and so what they showed of the younger kids, the preschool and first grade, wouldn't have transferred to middle school because they were like all talking at once with somebody's paper on the board. And that, I mean, I've gotten to where I show students work on the board, but critiquing it out loud is something that middle schoolers are still shameful about because they just don't want to be called out, I guess, in front of their peers. So I don't know. I would like to, it seemed like more in the middle school, it was more of a small group critique versus let's throw your stuff up on the board and critique it kind of thing.
Mm.
That's a lot. That's a lot for middle schoolers. And I'm with you
Yes.
there. I mean, that would be a lot. Imagine us, I'm in a room full of our peers or colleagues with a lesson plan up and everybody's there to critique it.
Yeah.
That's going to take a really safe environment. And that's going to build a lot on those relationships that you have with students. And they're not the most tactful social group either. You know, sometimes their feedback bites a little bit more. You know, blame it on those hormones or whatever you would like to blame it on, but it doesn't always come through so tactfully. So it can be a little fearful. But if it is a program or something that the entire school has adopted, think about the ease of that and those older grades where it really could carry weight and could really take some of the load off of that teacher, but not in a sense of take the load off and it not be productive, you know, but that consistent program or consistent language maybe from pre-K up could really be beneficial.
Definitely.
Any other comments on that student to student feedback column?
One other thing I liked was that I've started using Amplify this year, and so it has a lot of student feedback, but it basically just throws them a sentence starter and says have somebody share and read and like respond with a sentence starter. And I liked how with the tag it was more of you have to write down first what you're critiquing and then show them like and share, because just sharing out loud is very hard to think on the spot. So that was just something I was thinking about.
And I agree with that in the sense of when we go back to middle schoolers and they're not always the most tactful, that gives them an opportunity to put those words through a filter before they really speak them out loud. And I think that's a safe way to give them responsibility within the classroom. Student to teacher. Let's see here. Student surveys. I know at the school I taught at, every year we did a student survey, and it was at the beginning of the year and it was across the board. There was a K-4 survey and a 5-8 survey. Do either of your schools do something similar? Well, what I found with that is because I didn't create it and it wasn't, what could I say? Specific to what my wants and needs were for the students, I felt like I didn't use it as much. And so I felt like it was a waste of time with all the other paperwork that the students were sent home and the parents had to fill out. And so I talked with my administration and said, you know, can I edit this and make it more personalized for me in my classroom? And so I felt like that leveraged more feedback opportunities for my personal classes and students. And I think really helped build those relationships because it was tailored to my personality and my expectations for the class. But yes, the opportunity to voice their opinions and giving them that ownership and to know that there's that two-way, dialogue is a two-way communication. And I think that's huge, that students realize that there's that relationship there and that foundation to where they can share that. Not only do I give feedback to you as your teacher, but I'm willing to take that as well. After each 4-week period class, yes, it is hard to implement something new during this year, and I understand that. But what I love is you could still do something similar in an online format, and you can keep that in your pocket for next year. A lot of feedback we'll get this year. Can you imagine the feedback students would get regarding COVID, or we would get asking about COVID? Okay, Anna, some of the sentence starter questions to have the students answer seem really scary to receive feedback on. Ooh, give me an example of one that you would like to speak to.
It said something like, what is something I do during my lessons that's super annoying? And I was like, oh gosh, what do I do that would be annoying? That would be hard to hear because that's like something you can't super stop doing. It's just something you do.
It's that behavior and like, oh, great.
Yeah.
So that is hard, but I love that she shared those mentalities. Like, you're going to have to prep yourself. You're going to have to be humble. You can't take it personal. I really appreciate that perspective. Okay, I want to ask you this, Kayla, just out of curiosity, as an administrator, as opposed to student to teacher feedback, which you can observe and see, do you all have any teacher to admin feedback, any avenues or ways for them to offer feedback to leaders of the school?
We do. Our county usually puts out a universal survey that goes through all the different comments of the school, all the different areas. And I think everybody thinks that it's not anonymous. So a lot of times you don't get a whole lot of people do it. But other times it's been interesting to see. Now, I don't think they did it last year, which is my first year in administration. But I remember my principal before, whatever, I guess it was one of the questions was, do you feel supported from your administration? And I guess a lot of people put no, and he took it very, offensive. And we had this big faculty meeting afterward, and he was like, "You don't feel supported, what is this?" So, I mean,
so not the reaction that I feel like he, goes back to, you've got to also train yourself to receive and act on that feedback.
Yes. So, I mean, they typically do that. I don't remember them doing it last year. And it's probably because we left for COVID, in March, because that's typically comes out towards the end of the school year. But I remember that very specifically because it was a very awkward faculty meeting. And it was one of the digital forms. So I really think everyone thought it recorded an email to tell who it was. I think he was on a mission to figure it out. But the county does do that. And I do think it's important because it's, everything from like a really basic, like, do you feel safe at school to, do you feel supported? So it's a very broad survey. So that is, I think it would be helpful to have that information.
I agree. Linda, did you guys do that at your school?
We did, yes. I think it was created by the state. I'm not sure about that, but yes, we had to do one every year as well. But I never heard any results. So apparently it was all okay and she didn't take it personally. I don't know, but yeah, we had to do that.
No, Kayla, that administrator maybe didn't act on that feedback in the best of ways. I do appreciate that he was wanting to dig in. Like, what do you mean you're not supported? How are you not supported? But it shows different perspectives, like what you think you're doing, but it's not being received that way. And I think, again, that's why feedback is so important to help us grow. Teacher to student. This is one that I feel isn't as common. Or no, student to teacher was that one. Teacher to student, I feel, is the most common, obviously. And I love how we were able to see Engage New York has those great examples of videos, and anonymous Kayla, who is not so anonymous after all. She loves that specific feedback given to them. he not only pointed out what needed to be improved in their writings, but reminded them of things they did correctly. So just like Kayla said, like that positive sandwich, like I'm not going to negate the fact that we can build upon something, but I'm also not going to ignore that you are really doing great over here. And I love that. And I love that you offer that to teachers as well. Any other comments on that teacher to student feedback avenue? All right. Well, thanks for exploring that. We'll continue to move on.
So if you looked at the participant guide, it said, or it had a surprise box, and it said that there was a surprise. So this surprise is probably the most feared type of feedback among educators. Dun, da, da, da. Teacher to teacher feedback. So we have a little short Edutopia video that we'd like for you to watch of some teacher to teacher feedback. I really like this particular video because of the protocol that they use, and I think it would be very helpful. So without further ado.
And ladies, to honor your time, I just want to go ahead and say the time is 4:25, and I know we're supposed to end at 4:30. Looks like we're going to run a few minutes over, but again, we do want to honor your time, and if you need to go, feel free to sign off. Sound okay?
Organize it from greatest to least before he drafted it.
This one's counted by sixes, 12s, 5s. Because our teachers look at student work, they really see what students are thinking and how they're expressing their understanding from the classroom, and they're better able to guide and facilitate a deeper level of student learning. So it's two ways of them being able to think about creating this graph.
At Two Rivers, we really care about our whole community as learners.
So what do you do for learning?
That includes not just our students, but also our staff.
The reason we look at student work is to help teachers become better teachers. Student work is the expression of what kids are learning. And so if you're thinking about how am I doing as a teacher, there's your evidence.
So when you guys go with your partner, you're going to work to create a what type of graph? Bar graph.
We just started doing bar graphs with them last week, so it's relatively new.
Make sure your name is on it, please.
The process of looking at the work will really help me as I'm planning the rest of this sequence of lessons. One of the most powerful things that we do is looking at student work protocol.
Taryn today brought a set of student work. The group of teachers and I took a look at that work to give her some insights into what do her kids really understand around this technical skill of creating a graph.
So the task that they have was Miss Cynthia is ordering new shirts for next year. The protocol starts where I give a very short introduction to what the work is. How can Miss Cynthia create a graph to represent the data about the different colored shirts she ordered? And what you'll see is the chart with the different colored shirts, and there's different numbers, so it was differentiated. The team looks at the work and they look at it silently, just thinking about how they would respond to the task, and then looking at how students did. After that, there is about 5 minutes where the presenter is silent and you're just talking about things you notice and things you wonder about the task. I notice that there's one of the sets, it's only 2-digit numbers. I wonder which students got which sets of numbers.
After about 5 minutes, we shift the protocol to comments where there is analysis, and we can start to put our own judgments into what we are seeing with the data. I feel like what the kids needed to grapple with in this problem was really around scale.
Look at how different they look based on what the scale that they chose was. I feel like there's this profound vulnerability in being silent while your team looks at the work that you're doing. It removes you from the conversations that you can really focus on what people are saying because you're listening. Following that, there's a discussion. I think what was happy for me to hear was you guys noticed what we wanted them to grapple with was the scale on this one. And that's the part where we really talk about, okay, well, what are the next steps that students need? Thinking about the story, if we look at Matthew's and then someone else, it all of a sudden looks like way more shirts were ordered.
If you're designing a graph to tell a story of something, you know, scale matters, right?
I feel like I get concrete feedback and concrete steps to take. I like the ideas that you guys said. What is the story? Like, what do we want people to think about it? So I really like the idea of graphing telling a story. What else could that graph be telling me? So I think that's going to be our focus. Has anyone ever thought about stories in math before? I don't know if you're going to believe me, but the bar graphs you create tell a story.
Getting feedback is daunting at first, but after people experience it, they relish it.
The same way students get ideas from each other, I get a lot of ideas from my colleagues. I absolutely love it and I need it.
So what are your thoughts on this particular video? Is this something that you think your teachers would appreciate doing, or is it something that you just don't have the culture at your school to be able to handle that?
I think we probably have certain grade levels that would be receptive to it. Sorry, I have full French bulldogs. They heard my boys just get home outside, so they're
Yeah.
But I mean, I really think it could be useful, but I think it's building that culture to
Mhm.
get used to that, because I do
Yes.
think that it could be very difficult,
Mhm.
especially in the beginning. But I mean, I can really see the benefits from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like this protocol. I like the way that the teacher in the beginning just introduces what she had the students do, and then she's silent and she just observes and watches. And then as they progress, then she's able to come back in and give information. But I noticed that she said that, I'm glad you noticed that. So she's not just sitting there twiddling her thumbs, painting her nails, she's really paying attention to what they're saying so that she can improve her practice. And the fact that they're analyzing the work, they're not analyzing her and how she teaches. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. If this would work, you would have to put yourself out there. You'd have to be vulnerable for a little while and get used to this protocol. But I think over time, as Kayla said, I believe that teachers would find it very helpful in their everyday practice. And I like at the very end where she says that the same way students get ideas from other students, I get ideas from my colleagues. I absolutely love it and I need it. And even though when I was in the classroom, we didn't get together like this as a group, but if I had an issue with work that a student was doing and I could not figure out what was going on with them, I would take it to a colleague and I would say, will you look at this and tell me what you see, because I've looked over this and over this and over this, and I can't figure out why they're not getting this correct, or, what is going on with this. And, if you're willing to open yourself up to this, I think it could be fabulous and such a big boost to your own career and to help students. And the Brandy found this quote, and I just really like the quote. The most valuable resource that all teachers have is each other. Without each other, our growth is limited to our own perspective. And when you think about that, so many perspectives come into this. The knowledge I bring, the knowledge someone else brings, the knowledge someone else in that group brings, and everything that we bring together, I think would help us in our own practice to become better teachers and to be able to give the better feedback, because we're noticing more things as well. So now Brandy's going to tell us about some technology.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. Ladies, to honor your time, we're going to go through this quickly, but as opposed to watching the videos together, I'm dropping those in the chat, and they will also be available on our resource page, and you could explore those. They're short videos, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, but again, we're trying to honor your time as best we can. And we do not want to take away from the awesome dialogue and communication that we have in this group. So we don't want to rush through, but we also don't want to give you the content that we had promised to share. So with that, streamlining feedback with some tech tools, what we'd really like to preface this with is that though technology is a huge asset and makes feedback so much easier within our classrooms, it's not the only answer. It's going to be thoughtfully applied and not used just for the sake of using. Other feedback protocols, such as the tag that we explored and talked about earlier, are also powerful ways to leverage that feedback gain in your practice. So please don't forget those tools as you purposely plan for that future feedback, or as you are watching teachers within the classroom and observing that both sets, digital and rote, are awesome ways. I mean, there's always the it's not auditory. I've lost my word. When we speak it.
Verbal.
Verbal. Oh my goodness, that should have been so simple. Thank you for saving me there. So we were going to spotlight a few tech tools. We were going to talk about Floop, Screencastify, and Moat. And what's neat about these are, like Screencastify, really we're just talking about a screencasting system in general, but that's the one that we found the best informative video for you to use in feedback. Have you used or observed teachers using any of these?
I use Screencastify to make my lesson videos now that I teach virtually.
So we are so excited to offer you a new perspective on Screencastify and share that video with you. So just make sure that you're able to watch that. And as you watch those videos, we would hope that you would see it through these lenses. How will these tools help me honor those 7 keys to effective feedback from Wiggins that we talked about in the first session? Or how will that feedback tool help me to feed forward rather than to just feed back? And then how will this tool help me process or help me operate in that process level of feedback that we discussed in that first session? So going back to that research-based foundation that we built in our first session, knowing what does make feedback effective. As I said, I want to honor your time, so I'm going to try to get through the videos. Thank you for bearing with us and showing some grace. All right, so we would take some time to reflect normally here, but to get to a good takeaway, let's look at what I'm getting ready to drop in the chat. This is an opportunity for us as a group to share some strategies that we've used in our own classrooms. So for example, I'll pull this up, and again, I'm dropping that link in the chat. This is a document that you'll be able to keep, just like the Padlet, Anna, that you asked about. This will also be available. But this is a way for us to come together as a community of learners and put some strategies and ideas and protocols on a list that we've used, or on a list to showcase what we've used and how it worked, or maybe even didn't work here in this personal application field. And notice that we struck out the word tech because we want all of those feedback tools, because they all help us streamline, and your perspective and how you used it within the classroom, or Kayla, for you, maybe how you even observe someone using it in the classroom, is so high effect for us to be able to say, maybe that the way she used it wasn't effective, so we can use it in a different way here at our school, like tag feedback, or maybe using the Floop, Moat, or Screencastify. So that is kind of our homework. an opportunity for you to add in some other tools that you use, and we'll share that out on our Rural Life page. Oh, Brittany, you had to bring in the baby. So we'll bring that in on our Rural Life page. So if you don't mind, just within today or tomorrow to add your thoughts to that, maybe even right after this. And feel free to watch the Floop, Moat, and Screencastify links. Again, that we'll just add them all here, because if you click here, you can see both of those videos. And I'll add Screencastify for you as well. So sorry to rush through that. Linda, take us home.
So at the very beginning, we asked you to, oh, no, sorry, moving on. So what's next? If you'll look at the screen, you'll see some information about what will be coming up next. So please share your learning with others. You as lead teachers are a leader in your school. So when you get new information or find a new tech tool or learn something that was just blew you away, please share it with your other teachers in your school. There's a template that you can use to make it easy to share. It includes a Rural Life Professional Learning Resource Guide, and you can click on that in order to look at that. And then looking at the calendar, the Lead Teacher Collaborative dates, we have November 18th, of course, has already happened. We just finished up our second Affinity group session today, the 10th. And on the 24th, lead teachers will be learning with Leading Edge Learning that day. And March 24th and April 21st will be our next Affinity group sessions. And then, of course, we're going to have some summer learning sessions during the summer. So we'd love for you to be a part of those as well. Then the last thing, if you could please fill out the survey that it will be dropped in the chat. It's a very short survey, and it's just a way for us to know how it went for you and things that we can do to improve. So we do appreciate you being here. I think it's just a minute or so long. It's pretty short. We do appreciate you being with us today and taking time out of your busy day at the end of your day, because I know you're tired just like everyone else is, but we do appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you on the 24th.
And in the chat, I know it looks confusing and it says survey, but the survey is actually above that on the link, and I'll drop it in again, or Brittany, if you can drop that in so it's not so confusing. That is actually the Screencastify video that is under survey. Ladies, thank you so much. We're excited to see you again with Leading Edge Learning and to hear those ideas and topics that surface.